Welcome back again. So we're going to have a look at the advantages and disadvantages of a census and a sample. These are Dr. Frost's answers. You may have come up with something else or whatever, but this is what he says. So the advantage of a census is that it should give a completely accurate result because you're collecting all the information from everybody in your population. The one that happens every 10 years should give the government, information about how many schools and hospitals and all that sort of thing they will need to build in the next 10 years. Of course, people could lie in the census, but theoretically it should give a completely accurate result. The disadvantages of a census are how much it costs, for example. Okay, and the reason there's only the big census every 10 years is because of the difficulty in actually doing that. Okay, and so it's time consuming and it's expensive. It cannot be used when testing involves destruction. That is true. So, for example, in a car factory, you might want to drive a car into a wall with a crash test dummy in it to find out whether or not your crumple zone, whatever it's called, is satisfactory. But of course, you wouldn't do that with every single car because then you wouldn't have anything to sell. So you can't do a census because you've got nothing left. Okay, and there's a large volume of data to process. As I say, if you do a census of the whole population in the country every 10 years, then you're getting data from every single household in the country rather than just a smaller cross-section. In terms of the sample, obviously that's going to be cheaper and quicker because that's the opposite of time-consuming and expensive, and less data to process. Obviously, if you only ask 50 people rather than 70 million, then you're going to get less data processed. The disadvantage, of course, unlike the census, the data may not be accurate. It doesn't mean that the people are answering inaccurately, but of course, if you then were to extrapolate what the population might be like, then it may give you false impression. And also, the data may not be large enough to represent small subgroups. And that's true. So let's say what we choose. Let's say we chose bus drivers, for example. In our population, then we will be representing all the bus drivers in the UK. But if we take a sample of, say, 10,000 people, if there's only one bus driver in it, then that person is not going to be large enough to represent all the bus drivers in the UK. I'm just going to finish this whole lesson with an example based upon what we've just looked at. So, a supermarket wants to test a delivery of avocados for ripeness by cutting them in half. Suggest a reason why the supermarket should not test all the avocados in delivery. Okay, so we've just looked on the previous slide where it said that a disadvantage of a census was that, if it involves destruction, then you haven't got anything left. And obviously, if you tested all the avocados in the delivery, then you're not going to be able to sell any of them. So that'll be the answer for that. We'll see that written in a minute. Part B, the supermarket tests a sample of 5 avocados and finds that 4 of them are ripe. Okay, as soon as I see those numbers, I'm thinking that's a very small sample size. It carries on. They estimate that 80% of the avocados in delivery are ripe. Suggests one way that the supermarket could improve their estimates. So, I'm going to show you the last slide with the answers, but I'm predicting that A says that if you destruct all your avocados, then you obviously can't sell any. And part B will say we should have a larger sample size. Okay. So part A, testing the avocados destroys them and thus they can't be sold. That's just what I said. And part B, use a larger sample size, as this will be a better estimate of the proportion of ripe avocados. Sometimes they might expect you to actually suggest a sample size. So for this one, you could go for 30, for example. That should probably be sufficient. It of course depends on how big the delivery is. If the delivery was 10,000 avocados, then you could legitimately do a sample size of 100, for example, but I doubt they're getting 10,000 avocados at once. So, thank you very much. That is the last video in this lesson. I hope it was helpful. Bye-bye.